This is Kim Garner-Huey, and I'm going to walk you through auditing a typical patient encounter using Intelicode auditing software. Of course, the first thing I need to do is open the Intelicode program. I'm going to use Intelicode Pro. You also have the option of Intelicode Solo or Intelicode Path. I use Intelicode Pro because it allows me, as a consultant, to audit for many different clients and keep those clients' information reports separate. If you were an internal auditor or only auditing for one company or one physician practice, then you could use Intelicode Solo because it functions as for just one practice. Intelicode Path stands for Physicians at Teaching Hospitals. It has the extra information or the extra questions to ask to ensure that those encounters follow the teaching physician guidelines. I'm going to go down and open the sample office. And I have to choose which auditor, and of course I'm going to just choose Auditor A. If it were one of my own clients, then of course it would have my information in there, and this information would print on the report to show which auditor actually performed that audit. The first screen that comes up is what we call the patient information screen. This is where we enter the information to set this encounter up. We have patient ID, last name, first name, date of birth. Now, I do not enter patients' medical record numbers or patients' names into my software. Again, I'm an outside consultant. My laptop travels all over the country. I prefer not to have identifying patient information in the software. I assign a dummy ID number to my patient encounters, and then I provide my clients with a key to who those patients are. And that's a separate document, and I don't have the information in here. However, if you're an internal auditor, you might prefer to enter the medical record number or even the patient's name so that when you're looking at the reports, going over these reports with the physicians, you can show them, well, this is for this patient, and it's a little bit easier that way. I would just enter, for example, 8001. I assigned a dummy number to this. If you are going to be using the preventive medicine codes, that's when you're going to have a date of birth. Any code that is determined by the patient's age will not be correctly displayed in Intelicode if you don't enter the date of birth. Then you must choose patient status, new versus established, and then the patient's gender. Those are required fields. Attending provider, you could preload all your providers in here, or at this point you could add a new provider. And you could add by ID number, whether you use an ID number, and then the physician's name, and then you can choose the physician specialty. Now you can choose all of the different specialties that are listed here, or if you just start keying in, let's say this is a family practice physician, family practice will come up for you to choose. We can choose a default exam type. If this provider always uses a certain type of exam, you can choose it here in this field. If you want to use a fee schedule, then you would add it here. I can save this, and then I've got all the information I need to use that provider. Or we can use one of the providers that are preloaded. Well, today let's say we'll use Dr. Feelgood. We'll have to enter our visit date. It's going to default to today's date, whatever the date of the audit is. So if you want to choose a different date so that it correctly shows, you'll have to go back and choose that. Let's go back just a month and say May 2nd was our date. Requesting provider we would use if this were consultation and we wanted to track our referring providers. And then, of course, the user reviewer is the auditor who you logged in under, the name you logged in under when you started the program. Over here, we're going to choose our service type. We have everything from office visits all the way down through all the other types of service, all the way down to procedures only. When you choose this service up here, the next box is going to be the particular type of service under that category. So you can see office and other outpatient. We have initial visit. We have follow-up visit. If it was hospital observation service, we'd have observation discharge, initial observation care, hospital inpatient, and so on. If we were to choose consultations, then we have the option, or it's a requirement actually, to show that you've met the consultation requirements. So if we chose consultation, the consultation verification box is going to open, and we need to answer these 3 questions. An opinion or advice regarding evaluation and or management of a specific problem is requested, yes or no. If we click yes, we've got a box that tells us you've still not met the qualifications. Is this a shared medical record with the consultant? If we click yes, then we have met the qualifications. Well, let's say no. Then the third question lights up. A written report of the consultant's findings was provided to the requesting provider. We say yes, again the consultation requirements have been met. The answers to these questions will print on your encounter detail report to show that you've verified this information. If we say no, the qualifications have not been met, and again that will enter on the encounter detail report so that we'll know the qualifications were not met. We can close this box, or we can reopen it any time by clicking on consult verification. If we're auditing a service that has been provided by a physician's assistant, nurse practitioner, certified nurse specialist, or any of those providers that can be billed Incident 2, we also have an Incident 2 box that we can open that asks the questions to verify whether the Incident 2 guidelines were met with this in this encounter. Is this a Medicare patient or a payer that follows Medicare rules? Yes. Is the non-physician practitioner billing the service in the physician's name and number? Yes. The services are rendered in the office setting. Remember, Incident 2 only applies in the office setting. The services are for an established patient? Yes. The services rendered are for an established problem where initial treatment and plan was initiated by a physician? Yes. And you can see it takes a yes to all of those questions to determine that, yes, the Incident 2 guidelines were met. If, of course, this service is being billed in the non-physician practitioner's own name and number, or if it's a physician service only, then you don't have to be involved with this box at all. We also have occasion for note macros, which we will explore those a little bit further. So you've got all of the patient information you need. Well, let's go back and let's say this was an office visit, and we're going to say it was an established patient, and therefore it was a follow-up. Now these two need to match. If you say established patient here, then you need to say follow-up here. If you don't, if you say new here and follow-up here, then you're not going to have a CPT code suggestion because you've got a contradiction there. Notice if we say a new patient status and an initial visit, we still don't have a suggestion here. This suggestion will only come up when you have met the criteria for a particular code. And remember, with a new patient, you have to have 3 of the 3 key components to determine your code. So you won't have a code suggestion here until you've met those 3 components. If it's an established patient and we say follow-up visit, then we automatically have the code 99211. Because remember, 99211 does not have specific documentation requirements as far as history, exam, and decision making. The fact that that's an established patient that's in the office for a medically necessary service, you've met the documentation requirements for 99211. There are other considerations as well, but as far as counting beans, you've met 99211. So now we need to proceed on to the history screen.